We're here in front of the Extension Service and Park Headquarters building, which is part of Pinewood Cultural Park, right next door to the Botanical Gardens. We're going to wander around a bit and look at the plant diversity that you can find here on the property. There is a map that is in a separate PowerPoint. You can see here's the map we're going from, and I will point out as we wander around where we're located if I possibly can. Also, please refer to the PowerPoint with the digitized map, which perhaps would be a little bit easier to view. Most of the plants we're going to see today are going to be flowering plants, division Magnoliophyta. However, there is a diversity of plants here. If you search for them and know where to look, you can find plenty of different types of plants. We're still right here in front of the building. Let's look and see what we can find diversity-wise. Remember, most of the plants are going to be flowering plants, but not all of them for sure. Starting here with a flowering plant that should be easy to tell if it's a monocot or dicot. This is Ixora, I-X-O-R-A. To review, you can look at the leaf veins. If the veins are netted or branched, like in this plant, that means it's a dicot. If they were all parallel, that would be a monocot. Or you could look at the flower parts. If the flower parts are in threes or multiples of 3, we know it's going to be a monocot. If it's 4, 5, or multiples of 4 or 5, then it's a dicot. We can confirm that this is certainly a dicot by counting the petals. Turn it right around, so there's the entrance again. Right around out here, we have another plant. This is our native cycad. This is Kunti. I know it may look kind of fern-like at first glance. Ferns, you know, reproduce by spores. The cycads reproduce by cone-like structures. And if we look closely, I'm sure that we could find some cone-like structures in here. I'm going to wander up here. I thought I saw some. There we go. I don't know if you can see it down in there, but there's one of the big female cones right down there. And that confirms this is certainly not a fern. This is a cycad. If it has cone-like structures, it's either going to be a cycad or it'll be a conifer. Kunti, our native cycad, it doesn't have pine-like cones that you're familiar with, or if I take some of the leaflets and crush them up, it's not going to smell like Christmas. Nope, no Christmas smell. It's definitely a cycad. This was a very important plant to the native Floridians as well as early settlers here, because they used to take the tuberous-like roots and they would prepare it and they'd make Kunti bread from this flour-like substance that they would get from the roots. You can't just yank a root up and chomp on it. You have to prepare it correctly. Kunti bread. Turning here now toward the west, let's come down this way. I see some more Kunti, but obviously there are many more flowering plants here too that we can look at. This is, in addition to being a great place for plants and plant identification, there are plenty of insects here. Lots of butterflies, lots of pollinators that you can find here at the Botanical Gardens and right in front of the Extension building. Oh, you can see one right there. This is on the dotted horsemint. The dotted horsemint is a dicot, obviously a flowering plant. It's a dicot. You could tell not so much by the flowers in this case, but the leaves for sure. Right over here is one of our native palms. This is saw palmetto, S-A-W. It gets its name due to the fact that it has many saw-like teeth on the stems. If you've ever walked through saw palmetto in shorts, you know why it has the name saw palmetto. Looking back in there, let's see if we can see those teeth on there. Oh yeah, you can make out the teeth. And they'll do some tissue damage for sure. Saw palmetto is a flowering plant. It is a real palm. Why do I say real palm? Well, there's some plants that are called palms that aren't palms. They look like palms, I'll give them that, but they're really not palms. Real palms are flowering plants that produce flowers and then fruit. Knowing that saw palmetto is a real palm, is it a monocot or dicot? Well, let's take a look. If you look closely at the leaf veins, you notice they all run parallel, meaning it is certainly a monocot. Saw palmetto. We're still in front of the extension building. If we turn and look the other way, away from the building, here's another palm, a real palm. This is Everglades palm, also known as Perotis palm. And just like saw palmetto, it is a real palm. You can see up there in the upper branches, it has fruit, and the fruit came from flowers. It is a flowering plant, Division Magnoliophyta. Just like saw palmetto, if you were to look at the leaf veins, sure enough, they're all going to be parallel, so we know it's a monocot. Right next to these beautiful Everglades palms, we have the bridge that goes across this little wetland area. And right here adjacent on either side of the bridge is a huge fern that we have in the area. This is giant leather fern. Giant leather fern. It is going to be the biggest fern you come across here in Florida unless somebody planted a tree fern somewhere. The giant leather fern is a real fern, meaning it is in division Pterophyta. You can see underneath this tall leaf coming up are the sporangia, which coat the entire undersurface of the leaf, giving it a brown appearance. If the sporangia were gathered together into definite structures, either circular or linear, those would be sori. Giant leather fern doesn't have sori. It coats the entire undersurface of the leaves, the leaflets, with the sporangia. Giant leather fern, division Pterophyta. Continuing across the bridge here, there's another division. Oh, these beautiful Bismarck palms are right here too. They're also real palms, division Magnoliophyta. When we get across the bridge, if you look to either side, right near the water, you're going to find some cypress trees. Cypress is a conifer, division Coniferophyta. Looking up, we may be able to see some of the little cones. They're kind of golf ball shaped cones that perhaps you can make out on some of the branches up there. There are some of them. Those are the cones from the bald cypress. We have bald cypress and pond cypress in the area. These are conifers, division Coniferophyta. There are also numerous pines in the area, which we'll see some of them, as well as cedar. Our most common cedar we find here in this part of Florida is southern red cedar, or some people call it eastern red cedar. We'll come across that. All of those are conifers, so that's another division for you. Division Coniferophyta. So far then, we've had how many divisions? Well, we saw lots of flowering plants, division Magnoliophyta. We also saw Cycadophyta, the Kunti. We saw a fern, the giant leather fern, division Pterophyta. And now our fourth division, just right here in the parking lot area in front of the building, is division Coniferophyta. We're going to head behind the building and take a look at what's back there. Then we can cross over to the botanical garden portion of the Pinewood Cultural area. We're now on the other side of the extension and parks building. I just went through the little breezeway going in through the building, and we're going to take a look at what's out here. Not so much what's right here on this side of the building. What we're going to do is we're going to head down to the tropical area to check out what's there. Looking at the map, I'm right here now, whoop, on the backside, right next to the herb garden. And we're going to come over here to the tropical area. From there, we can go over to the other side where we're going to hit the east gardens of the botanical gardens. We'll go over toward the tropical fruit area. Before we do that, though, I did notice something right here. A couple things, actually. Right here is one of our native holly trees. This is Daehoon holly. You know it is a flowering plant because it has fruit. It has the fruit there, which tells us it's a flowering plant. Fruit came from flowers. So it's Division Magnoliophyta. If we were to take a view at the veins in the leaves, we can tell, yep, definitely a dicot. The veins are not all parallel, they're netted or branched. If I turn around now, there's the herb garden, and if we're going to make our way toward the tropical garden, there is a whole bunch of bamboo here. They have many species of bamboo at the botanical gardens. Bamboo is pretty much a grass-like plant. Like grass, bamboo then is a flowering plant. And if we look close at the veins, just like for grass, if we had leaves of grass, it would be the same thing. Looking closely at the veins, you can tell the leaf veins all run parallel, which means it is a monocot. Definitely a monocot. Tropical area is right down there. We'll pick it up there. Alright, we're at the edge of the tropical gardens. They have lots of tropical fruit here, including banana trees. Right here near the entrance, as we're walking toward the east, this is a string lily. Look at this string lily. Obviously it's a flowering plant. Beautiful flowers on there. If we look at the flowers, how many petals are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6! 6 meaning it would be a monocot. You could also look at the leaf veins. Very distinct leaf veins. All of them run in parallel. It confirms it. String lily is definitely a monocot. Division Magnoliophyta. As we make our way into the tropical area, right here, toward the water, we will notice an area where they grow loofahs, loofah vines. Loofah vines are where we can get the loofah sponges. If you're familiar with loofah sponges, it actually comes from a structure that looks pretty much like a huge cucumber as it grows on the vine. Loofah is a flowering plant. You can see one of the flowers down there. Unlike real sponges, meaning the sponges you get, say, up at the tarpon sponge docks, which are animals, loofah sponges definitely are not from an animal. They came from a plant. Loofah. Loofah is a flowering plant, and I know this leaf is pretty old, mangled up, but we can still make out the leaf veins. The leaf veins are netted or branched, meaning it is a dicot. Loofah, a dicot. As we continue on, we're going to head over to the east part of the botanical gardens. As you wander around the botanical gardens, you'll notice many, many different types of plants here. As we already said, and what has been very obvious, most of them are flowering plants. You'll find a mixture of other types too. Along the water's edge, we can see lots of different ferns. Many, many different types of ferns. Division Pterophyta. Some of the ferns, like the giant leather fern we already saw, they don't have sori, which are the arranged sporangia, but many ferns do, and that definitely helps you tell it's a fern. Looking here at this guy underneath, this is a swamp fern. And you can see underneath those leaflets, there are linear sori underneath there. The sori are arranged in a linear pattern along the midvein of the leaflets. Other ferns are going to have circular arrangement of the sori. Here's probably a better view of the linear sori from swamp fern. Down here, coming up from a different fern, is another noticeable structure. The fern leaves, or fronds if you prefer, they unroll, and as they unroll they have this appearance somewhat like the head of a fiddle, so they call them fiddleheads. Fiddleheads are the unrolling young leaves or fronds of a fern. Alright, before we head over the bridge to the east part of the Botanical Gardens proper, let's take a look at a couple things here right adjacent to the bridge. This is grass. This is Factahatchee grass. Just like the grass-like bamboo we saw a minute ago, the Factahatchee grass is in fact a flowering plant. You can tell for sure it is a monocot. The leaves of grass have parallel leaf veins. Here and elsewhere on the property you'll find different types of pine trees. Most of them are probably going to be slash pines like this one, Division Coniferophyta. They get the cones, you know what pine cones look like. They get the cones on them. Those are the female cones. The male cones are the ones that are out early in the spring. They don't hang around a long time. They put pollen everywhere and they're done. They fall off. The female cones are the ones that produce the seeds, and they get much larger and they're retained for a longer period. Division Coniferophyta. Alright, we're now across the bridge here into the east gardens of the Botanical Gardens. We're right here. We're going to walk down this pathway. Right here at this overlook area, if we turn away from the water, there are a couple of different types of plants we can look at right here. Here is the third common type of conifer we have in the area. We've already seen the cypress and the pines, which are conifers. This is our southern or eastern red cedar. It gets little bluish gray cones on it. They look kind of like berries, but they're not berries, they're cones. This is definitely a conifer. Southern or eastern red cedar. Very, very useful wood too. Cedar wood is naturally rot resistant and insect resistant and repellent. That's why in a lot of the old homes you may have noticed they used to line their closets with cedar. And they'd make cedar chests to put their linens and things in. That's because it would keep the bugs out. So bugs wouldn't be getting in their clothes and things. This tree right next to that cedar, this is a pignut hickory tree. Hickory produces fruit, hickory nuts, and we know then it's a flowering plant. If we were to look at the leaf veins, we can tell definitely it is a dicot. Division Magnoliophyta and a dicot, Dicotyledonate. We're now right in front of the wedding garden area, which is a popular spot. They do weddings here. A lot of people come, I know, take pictures for weddings or for special occasions. The wedding garden is right across the bridge, going back to the parking lot right in front of the building where we started. If we don't go through the wedding garden, but if you were to be facing the wedding garden, if you go around to the left, there's an area down there where we're going to head that is a great place to identify different cycads, more cycads over there. Let's head down toward the cycad area. We were just right here in front of the wedding garden. What I've done is I've come around toward what they call the vinery. And we're going to take a look at some of the plants right here by the vinery. This is where we'll find different types of cycads. Some of them are misnamed. They call them palms. I get it. But they're not palms. You remember real palms are flowering plants, division Magnoliophyta. Before we take a look at the palms, though, the so-called palms, and the other cycads here, let's take a look at this guy. This is a common fern you'll find in the area. It's called tuberous sword fern. Some people call it Boston fern. Tuberous sword fern is one of them that gets the circular sori underneath the leaves, which you can see there. Those are the circular sori. The swamp fern we saw before had linear sori. Both of them give it away as a fern, division Pterophyta. Alright, let's look over here. There's the vinery that way. We're right by the vinery. And here's some plants that are cycads. These are sagos, not sabol. Sabol is our state tree. It is a real palm tree. These are sagos. That's a queen sago palm. And right on the other side of it, there's a king sago palm. These are called palms, but they're not palms. They're misnamed. They are cycads. I get it. They look like palms. They have palm-looking leaves on them for sure. But they're not. They are not palms. They're not flowering plants. They have cone-like structures for reproduction. The sago palms, the king sago and the queen sago. Right next to it is another misnamed plant, a cardboard palm. You can even see it in the sign. Cardboard palms, just like the sago palms, well, they're not palms. They get big cone-like structures. You can see one in there. That's one of the female cones from a cardboard palm. These are cycads, division Cycadophyta. We have cardboard palm, the queen and the king sago palms, all those are cycads. And then right over here is a cycad that we already saw earlier when we were starting out. This is Kunti, our native cycad, Kunti. So there's the vinery, and here we had our different cycads. I'm going to head back down the path along the east side of the botanical gardens here, and we can see some other plants. There's one tree up here in particular I want to point out for those of you who are doing a plant collection or just for review purposes. Alright, just to help you out if you're trying to find our location, I think I'm about right here. The reason I wanted to stop here is because we have a palm tree, big old, looks like date palm. And this palm tree is like a bio-collector, plant collection nirvana, because on this palm tree we find different types of plants. Down here near the base, oh, they've started putting up Christmas stuff already. Down here near the base of the palm, this is whisk fern. Whisk fern is not a true fern, not division Pterophyta. Whisk fern is division Xylophyta. Whisk fern. Looks like you could take a clump of it, tie it together, and sweep like a whisk broom. Whisk fern, division Xylophyta. Also on the trunk of this palm tree, we got some fuzzy green carpet stuff growing here. That is real moss, true moss. Division Bryophyta. Division Bryophyta. Also growing on this palm tree, there are different types of ferns. You can see a little one here, and if you look up the palm, we can see up there, looks like there's more of that tuberous sword fern up there, division Pterophyta. The palm tree itself is a real palm, so that's division Magnoliophyta. What's so great about this tree and the other ones hanging on it or growing on it is there are 4 different divisions here. The tree itself is division Magnoliophyta. The different ferns, division Pterophyta, the true ferns. We saw moss, the fuzzy green carpet stuff. And then we had the whisk fern growing on the side as well, division Xylophyta. 4 different divisions: Xylophyta, Bryophyta, Pterophyta, the ferns, and Magnoliophyta, the tree itself. Just a very short way down the path from that palm with the other plants growing on it, we have Spanish moss. Spanish moss, you know, is not a moss. Spanish moss is not division Bryophyta. It is division Magnoliophyta. It gets little flowers on it. It is a flowering plant. Don't put division Bryophyta for Spanish moss. Spanish moss is misnamed. It's not a moss at all. I think I'm about right here now, somewhere in this general area on the map. I'm heading down toward this last little pathway down here, and I noticed growing here on the base of another palm tree, or actually it's not a palm tree, growing on the base of this tree, there's some more whisk fern, division Xylophyta. If for some reason you can't find the other whisk fern, perhaps you can find this, division Xylophyta, whisk fern. Alright, I'm about right in here, I believe. Right in this area, and I wanted to stop here specifically to point out this young tree growing. He is not looking healthy at all. I'm kind of doubting if he's going to make it. Perhaps you recognize this. This is a ginkgo tree, Ginkgo biloba, which is in its own division, Ginkgophyta. I'm hoping maybe it's just losing its leaves for the winter time, but I'm going to tell you, he hadn't been looking real good for a while now. Hopefully he'll pull through. If you need one last division, you can probably hunt down the ginkgo. Ginkgo biloba, Ginkgophyta is a division. Right here next to the ginkgo tree, this is a very common vine we have in the area. This is foxgrape or muscadine. It does produce a grape-like fruit. In fact, it is grapes, wild grapes. You can eat them, they're delicious. On this vine, like many of our vines, there is a structure which is one of your vocab terms. Many of our vines get these structures that they produce to help grab onto things so they can climb up trees and walls. Those structures are tendrils. Tendrils. The tendrils are the structures. They're modified leaf tissue, but they're not leaves. They're the structures that the vines will produce, and they wrap around. It helps them climb up things. Perhaps you can see one of them kind of coiled around itself in there. Foxgrape itself, we know it's a flowering plant because it produces fruit and it gets flowers for sure. So it's Magnoliophyta, definitely a dicot. You can tell that by the leaf veins. To wrap it up, because we're almost back to the bridge where we can head back to the parking lot. I'm right here next to the restrooms, what they call the bromeliad garden area. The restrooms are immediately adjacent to the wedding garden. They're on the south side of the wedding garden. Just in case, if you didn't get a good view of the true moss, the division Bryophyta, when we were looking at our plant collection tree, here's some more on this rock here. You can see fuzzy green carpet. That fuzzy green carpet, that is real moss, true moss. You can see growing on the surface of this rock. Division Bryophyta. I can even see some of the little tiny sporangia coming up. Perhaps you can make it out as well. The little sporangia coming off the moss, those are the spore producing structures from our true moss, real moss. Alright, well hopefully our brief wandering around the botanical gardens helped you out a bit as far as plant identification, and hopefully it'll be useful if you're doing a plant collection. I'm going to head back over toward where we started, and that'll conclude our brief tour of the botanical gardens and the adjacent area. Remember, there are plenty of different types of plants here, many more than we were able to do in this short little hike through the property. Come take a look. You can get plenty of different examples of plant divisions. Also, it's a pretty good place if you're doing a bird collection. You can get decent bird pictures here frequently, as well as I mentioned previously, the insects. There are lots of insects. Great pollinator area. Good luck!